Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the last and final part to Izuku Unleashed and Unhinged. This will be the last three chapters, chapters 8 through 10. Chapter 8. Praise the Rat God and his Chaos Disciple. Kaminari was Izuku's new best friend. The boy had stopped by the vice principal's office to thank Izuku for getting him tested for ADHD and setting up his accommodations. He ended up staying to help Izuku and Eri build their Lego castle, and soon every day Kaminari was stopping by to chat with them and play Animal Crossing. It didn't hurt that the blonde was also a big fan of Hitoshi. They spent a lot of time harassing the insomniac about how he was secretly a giant softy. Hitoshi loved it. Don't listen to what he says about it. His new best friend was a huge fan of pranks, so that was a plus. Kaminari was the one who suggested sending Aizawa books and articles about erectile dysfunction. When the first book showed up on his desk in the teacher's lounge, Yamada laughed so hard he almost peed himself. Aizawa threw the book at Izuku. A week after it started, Aizawa began leaving self-help books for teens on Izuku's desk. His favorites were Yay, You're Gay, Now What? And A Guide to Growing Up. Both full of great advice that he would never take. It was great for dealing with the students mid-crisis, though, so he kept reading them. Leaving life-sized cardboard cutouts of Aizawa in a cat onesie Yamada had gotten him for Christmas all over the school was also a Kaminari plan. If he kept coming up with these great plans, Izuku might have to marry him as well as Hitoshi. Platonically, of course, since Kaminari had come out to Izuku and Hitoshi as Arrow Ace. They would still cuddle the shit out of their platonic husband. At this point, Izuku had met all of Hitoshi's classmates. Most of them loved Shadow, but Bakugo hated him. Probably because he showed up to their training to boo him during sparring, and Eri held up scorecards. He always got a 2, when he didn't have any actual work to do. That was also the main reason the Baku squad loved their vice principal so much. Ida had been a tough nut to crack, but when Izuku handed out detailed analysis on ways to strengthen and utilize their quirks, the class president realized Izuku wasn't just an agent of chaos. Now he regularly asked Izuku for more tips, and there was a respect for him under all the lectures on proper behavior. None of the students had even tried to ask about Izuku's real identity, and even Bakugo didn't recognize him. Thank you, voice-disguising technology. Most of the hero course had immediately joined the Rat God congregation. They met weekly to discuss conspiracy theories about Nezu. Todoroki had the best theories in Izuku's opinion, and do brain teasers to embrace their inner Rat God. They had t-shirts, keychains, and phone cases covered in Nezu's face that made Aizawa sigh heavily when he saw them decorating people's backpacks and phones in the halls. The club was fun, and helped foster relationships between students in different courses. Annoying Aizawa was just a bonus. One of the best things about having an actual job was not depending on the money criminals were carrying when he took them down to get by, which meant Izuku had all the money he wanted to spoil Eri. Izuku had gotten her enough clothes and toys to fill them all. Hitoshi claimed she was going to get spoiled, but he'd spent a month's allowance on a pair of light-up sneakers she wanted so she could get the custom color option. So Izuku thought his boyfriend had no room to talk. It had been a problem when Izuku had finally decided that Aizawa and Yamada would be the best option for her parents, not because they had any issue with adopting the girl they'd fallen in love with in the months since school started. No, the problem was trying to fit all of her things in the room they set up for her in the apartment. At first, they wanted her to get rid of some of her clothes, but Eri had learned how to weaponize her cuteness, and soon enough, Hitoshi and their dads were sharing their closets. Izuku still got to see Eri every day at school since she kept her job as his assistant, and Hitoshi brought her to his lair every other weekend for movie night. He found himself with a lot more spare time now that he wasn't caring for Eri constantly. Technically, he couldn't act as a vigilante, but that didn't stop him from driving villains insane. Aizawa had started retaliating because he knew where to find Shadow most of the time, but villains had no such luck. So, there was nothing they could do about the indestructible robots Izuku built and programmed to follow around the villains he was targeting. The robots looked like little dogs and blared whatever kind of music the villain in question hated the most at full volume. It was very hard to do crime when everyone heard you coming. A few villains had even turned themselves in just to get away from the bots. There were also small robots that had started hanging out in the alleys that tased anyone committing a crime and called the cops, but no one could tie that back to Shadow, so any talk that they belonged to the former vigilante was all speculation. The day Izuku befriended Mei, Power Loader started considering retirement. Aizawa refused to help corral the two teenagers since neither of them were his problem, and Power Loader should join the club of people who aren't paid enough for this shit. They made it Aizawa's problem when he caught them trying to attach flamethrowers to all of his students' hero costumes. Now all their inventing sessions had to be supervised, which was what led to an accidental identity reveal. May had been under the machine they were building for Nezu to use in the next Hero Course finals. It did not look like the Megazord from Power Rangers. Shut up, Kaminari. When the support beam gave out and trapped the girl, before Aizawa and Powerloader could rush over to help, Izuku used his quirk to appear next to her and lift the machine off his friend. Aizawa was frozen, with his mouth open, clearly having recognized the green lightning surrounding the boy. Izuku didn't take a minute to think about how he was going to need to have a talk with the man. He scooped up his friend, rushed her to Recovery Girl. Luckily, May had just broken a leg and no other serious injuries. She also had a new obsession with making support items for Shadow based on his quirk. He only left the infirmary when May's parents showed up to take her home. Izuku went to his office and was not surprised to see Aizawa waiting for him. Chapter 9. Everyone makes mistakes, and Izuku will make sure you have those days. Shota felt like an idiot. The second he saw Shadow use his quirk, he realized how obvious it was that this vigilante was Izuku Midoriya. The skills Shadow used to pull all his pranks were the same skills Izuku would have needed to disappear so completely. It also made sense that Nezu had hired Shadow as VP. Not only did he love chaos and proving how much smarter he was than humans, but clearly Midoriya was the level of smart and skilled that would make the rodent itch to get his paws on the kid. Finally, the reason for all the pranks made sense. He let Powerloader go to the infirmary to check on his student alone. Hizashi had already taken the kids home, so he was free to wait for Midoriya in the kid's office after sending his husband a text to let him know he'd be later than expected. The wait was spent trying to not choke on his regret. Obviously, he'd made a mistake expelling Midoriya. If anyone had potential to be an amazing hero, it was this kid. Shota had been thinking it was a mistake since he realized how thoroughly the kid had scrubbed his records, even if he was the arrogant, lazy kid relying on a quirk that he'd assumed. With the skills it had taken to disappear, he clearly had the skills for underground investigations. Eventually, Midoriya entered the office, not surprised to see Shota leaning against his desk. Pulling off his hood and mask, the teen sighed. So you figured me out. Congratulations. After Midoriya sat behind his desk, Shota took a seat in one of the chairs opposite. I was wrong to expel you. I realized that when it was so impossible for me to track you down. I thought you were one of those kids with a flashy quirk that thought it was enough to be a hero. Seeing as you don't have any broken bones right now, I'm guessing there was more to the story. When Midoriya opened his mouth, he held up a hand. Before you say anything, know that I'm aware you don't owe me an explanation. I just wanted you to know what my very incorrect reasoning was. Also, I was planning on offering you a spot in the hero course again when I managed to track you down, as long as you worked on controlling your quirk. Obviously, you don't need that, but I thought you should know that I'm aware of my mistake and was planning to rectify it before I realized who exactly I'd expelled. Midoriya eyed him for a moment before responding. Well, thank you for admitting that. I'll consider accepting your apology if you swear to stop expelling students before they get a real chance to show you their potential. Shota nodded. It's become clear to me that my prejudices around people with quirks like yours has been clouding my judgment. So I'd like to propose something. From now on, before I expel a student for any reason, I'd like you to go over that student's performance with me, so that we can figure out if I'm missing potential and how to be a better teacher for that student if I am. Tapping his fingers on the desk, Midoriya considered that. Then he smiled. Okay, I'll accept your apology and agree to that arrangement. But I'll be keeping an eye on you, and if you start making the same mistakes, I'll be taking the issue to Nezu. The smile on the teen's face sent chills down Shota's spine. They both knew how seriously Nezu took any kind of discrimination, and Shota was sure that played into his desire to hire Shadow to teach Shota a lesson. That's fair. His expression turned from predatory to friendly, and Midoriya told Shota his story. The more he learned about the kid's past, the worse he felt about how he treated him. By the time it was done, Shota knew Midoriya had let him off easy, both with his acceptance of his apology and the pranks he'd pulled. If Shota had been in his place, he would have been much angrier and possibly much more violent in his revenge. The look on his face must have made his guilt obvious, because Midoriya smiled his predatory grin again. I'm not going to beat you up more than you're already beating yourself up. But I'm not stopping my pranks yet. Ruining your day has become the highlight of mine. Shota knew he deserved it, but that didn't stop dread from pulling in his gut. Before he could wallow in it, Midoriya chuckled. Also, I want you to keep my identity between us for the moment. You can tell Yamada if he can keep it to himself, but there's a student of yours I want to surprise with it. It's Bakugo, isn't it? When the boy's grin turned feral, Shota knew he was in for another headache. He just sighed and agreed. Based just on Bakugo's personality, he probably deserved whatever Midoriya had planned for him. Leaving the office, Shota wasn't at all surprised to get a text from Nezu asking to see him. He went straight to the principal's office where Nezu was waiting for him with some tea. Sipping from the offered cup, he waited for his boss to lecture and/or murder him. Nezu held eye contact the entire time he sipped on his tea, no blinking at all. His beady eyes looked right into Shota's soul, and if he hadn't been dealing with this since his own years at UA as a student, he would have broken down instead of just being extremely unnerved. "So, Shota, you finally found the student you expelled for lack of potential." Shota could already feel a migraine growing. "I know it was a mistake, made because of clouded judgment. I'm ready to accept whatever punishment you deem fit." Tiny paws folded together, and Nezu made his weird, chittering laugh. "I do believe that you've learned the error of your ways, and Midoriya will see to punishing you. However, if it comes to my attention that you've let unfair judgment interfere with a student's education again, there will be dire consequences." "Understood, sir." Shota believed from the bottom of his heart that if he messed up like this again, Nezu would make Midoriya's pranks look like the best time of his life. After they finished their tea and discussed some other student matters, Shota finally went home where Eri was practicing braiding on Hisashi while Hitoshi live-streamed it on his TikTok. Thankfully, Hisashi had kept his teasing about his searching for Midoriya while the kid was right there to a minimum. Shota didn't even need to keep Shadow's identity secret for more than 24 hours. Right after homeroom ended, Izuku came into the room wearing a rat god crop top, ripped jeans, and rainbow sunglasses. The second he came into the room, Bakugo stood up, slamming his hands on the desk. "What the fuck are you doing here, Deku?" Sliding his shades onto the top of his head, he winked at the explosive blonde. "That's really no way to talk to your vice principal, Bakugo." He put a hand over his heart, with an exaggerated, worried face. "I could expel you for calling me useless. I'll give you a pass this time, since this is the first time I'm showing any students that aren't my beautiful boyfriend my face. Anyway, I'm here to get my assistant." Izuku turned to Eri, who had spent homeroom coloring in the corner, at Midoriya's instructions. Shota had known something was up, but he'd learned not to question the chaos gremlin that was probably permanently in his life now. Eri grinned and ran to Midoriya. "Shadow-ni, I drew you this picture." Bakugo appeared to be buffering while Midoriya cooed over Eri's drawing. Kaminari turned to Hitoshi with a grin. "Dude, your boyfriend is so cute. I just want to pinch his cheeks." Kirishima put a hand on Kaminari's shoulder. "Bro, you can't just call another dude's boyfriend cute, especially not right to his face." Midoriya, followed closely by Eri, sauntered over to sit on Kaminari's desk. "Denki can call me cute all he wants. He's the platonic love of my life." Hitoshi nodded seriously. "Our cuddle buddy can call either of us anything he pleases." Then he glared over at his classmates. "But only Kaminari. Anyone else calls my boyfriend cute and they lose their tongue." Smiling brightly, Midoriya flew off of Kaminari's desk to throw his arms around Hitoshi. "Aw, I love it when you get all possessive. It's so adorable." The last statement was accompanied by Midoriya smushing Hitoshi's cheeks between his hands. Shota would get on them about PDA, but he was just happy to see his son so open and happy with people his age. Not that he would admit that where anyone but Hisashi would hear it. Kaminari was beaming. "You're the platonic love of my life too, Shadow. Or, should I be calling you your actual name now that you're showing everyone your face?" Releasing his boyfriend, Midoriya stood up to drop into an exaggerated bow. "I'm Izuku Midoriya, at your service. Call me whatever's most comfortable. Except for Bakugo, you can only call me Mr. Midoriya." Finally, his brain loaded the situation and showed aside when Bakugo destroyed another desk. "How could you be the vigilante? You don't even have a quirk. I fucking saw Shadow use a quirk." Speaking as if he was talking to a toddler, Midoriya said. "There are these people, called late bloomers, Bakugo." Smirking, he leaned right into the other boy's face. "I can't help it that I'm so powerful that my quirk had to wait until I could handle it to manifest. Don't feel bad. Not everyone can have a quirk as awesome as mine." Knowing exactly how the student would respond to that, Shota canceled his quirk so his incoherent screaming was accompanied only by swinging fists instead of explosions. Shota would have broken out his capture weapon, but Midoriya skillfully dodged every swing with a smile. Eventually, he took an opening to jerk Bakugo's arms behind his back. "Attacking a staff member outside of a training exercise is grounds for expulsion, but I'm going to settle for putting you in mandatory anger management." He patted Bakugo's face. "You really need it." Then he shoved the boy away from himself and walked out of the room with Eri to cause chaos elsewhere. This time, when Bakugo tried to attack Midoriya, Shota wrapped him up in his capture scarf. He didn't blink until the boy stopped struggling. "You really do need anger management, Bakugo." Shota ignored his yelling and tried to ignore the sinking feeling that Midoriya was just getting started, spreading mayhem. Chapter 10. Local Gremlin has his cake and eats it too, more at 11. It took less than 2 hours after his talk with Bakugo for every student and staff member to know Izuku's real identity. Someone had snapped a picture of him and mass texted it, Mina. It spread like wildfire because UA was a school full of gossips. Since he was no longer a vigilante, and it was just a matter of time before students spilled the beans, he decided to do an identity reveal video that night. Shadows, dancing, and the removal of his hoodie and mask proved he had a backup career as a stripper if the hero thing didn't work out. Then he sat down and told everyone the story of how he became a vigilante in the first place. The amount of quirkless people in the comments losing their shit about the fact that his quirk came in after he'd started vigilante work was amazing. By the time he was at work the next day, Izuku had a list of people he was going to find mentors for to train the first group of quirkless heroes. After he doxed the first person spewing quirkist hate, everyone in the comments fell in line. Now he was sitting in his office during lunch drafting emails to heroes he thought would be willing to mentor quirkless hero hopefuls before they started high school. He was interrupted by Midnight entering his office with a grin. "Hello, boss child. How are you today?" He looked up with a heavy sigh and a very hard eye roll. "Midnight, we've talked about the term boss child, haven't we?" The hero laughed in a way that told him he would never stop hearing that title. "Right, I can call you boss child Midoriya now." She ignored the eye roll that got and plopped 2 bentos down on his desk. "I figured since you showed your face, your friends have lunch detention, and Eri was having lunch with her dad so we could eat together. So we can get better acquainted." Izuku stared at her. He could tell she was hiding something. There wasn't any hint of malice, though. "Why do you want to be better acquainted all of a sudden, Midnight?" Sitting down with a smirk, she opened her bento. "I think you can call me Namuri, or Kayama if you prefer. Sho was right, nothing gets past you." She opened the bento meant for him and slid it toward him. He cocked an eyebrow, not looking away from her face. "Fine. Sho and Zashi told me you're living alone in an abandoned building, so I thought I'd make you food, help you plan against Sho, give you date ideas for you and that adorable boyfriend of yours, give you the cool mom experience while you're still young." He stuffed some food in his mouth, chewing as he thought over her words. "So you want me to move in with you, be your foster kid or some shit?" "If you wanted to, eventually we could do that, or you can just stay in your building and we can hang out when you want. Maybe I'll be the fun aunt instead of the cool mom." She shrugged. Izuku matched her smirk, and somewhere on campus, Aizawa felt a chill run down his spine. "I'll consider it. For now, I think lunch is a good start, and you said something about assistance with my plots?" The tip Kayama gave him about Aizawa's secret fear of clowns, that only she and Yamada knew about, was golden. Replacing his screensavers on every device he used with a clown was easy. Wallpapering his bedroom with clowns wasn't as easy, if only because he had to sneak in when Yamada was out, and Aizawa would for sure be the first person home. Aizawa didn't seem as affected by that as the "Wanted for Crimes Against Fashion" posters plastered all over school with Aizawa dressed as a clown holding his ugly-ass sleeping bag. It offered a reward of 1 million jelly beans if information was provided that led to his capture or the death of his sleeping bag. Apparently, several students had decided Aizawa's wrath was worth the jelly beans and street rep, and tried setting the offending bag on fire. The man had stormed into Izuku's office, waving the singed yellow fabric and shouting about some things being sacred. It took everything in him not to fall out of his chair, laughing at the bright red face with a vein threatening to burst in his forehead. It was reminiscent of the time the man had caught him after sneaking in to make out with Hitoshi. Finally, he got the man to calm down by offering him a much less obnoxious sleeping bag and a nice shade of black, and they were back to their regularly scheduled love-hate relationship. In his opinion, the best thing about having revealed his face was the ability to kiss Hitoshi all over campus without the fear of someone seeing him sans mask. Ida had objected when he voiced that opinion. "Don't you think it's unprofessional for the vice principal to be kissing a student?" Uraraka had knocked his books to the floor. "Ida, don't you think it's unprofessional for the class president to make such a mess in the library?" She had become one of his favorite chaos minions since she joined the Rat God congregation. Several members of Class 1A were members of his Chaos Army, or friends if you preferred Hitoshi's terms now. They did regular teenage things like go to movies or the mall together and had sleepovers, all things he'd never pictured doing before. They all encouraged him to take Kayama up on her offer, even admitting that his lair was awesome. His army all thought he could benefit from having an actual guardian who watched out for and fed him. They eventually wore him down, and he found himself with a mom that wasn't human garbage. Kayama was amazing when he gave her a chance. She didn't try to force a bunch of unnecessary rules on him, knowing he could be trusted and take care of himself. She let him have people over whenever, made sure he had actual healthy food to eat, When he got sick, she stayed home to take care of him. There was the added benefit of her enjoying tormenting Aizawa with him. He didn't find it hard to enjoy spending time with her, and soon outside of school, Kayama became Namuri. Izuku hadn't expected any of this when he'd set out to get into UA. His plans had been completely derailed, but honestly, it all turned out so much better than he could have ever dreamed. He got a quirk, an amazing boyfriend, kick-ass friends, a mom, a mentor, a path to becoming a hero, and someone to torment for the rest of his life. Things were really looking up for him. All right, listeners, this concludes Izuku Unleashed and Unhinged. I figured it would be best to put the remaining 3 chapters in here because these last ones weren't super long in and of themselves, and I just figured why not just throw them all together. So I hope you all enjoyed this fic. Let me know your thoughts and reactions to everything so far. Again, if you like the fic and you have an opportunity, like always, I'll tell you, if you have a chance to get over to AO3 and leave comments or kudos to the original author, I'm sure it's much appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.